welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 115, and this is the weekend current economic collapse news brief. And let's get into the economic collapse news. Oh, wait, before I start, just want to make a correction that a couple episodes back I said the U.S. Mint sold 27 million ounces or so of silver, and that was a typo on their part. They corrected it, and now it's 2.7 million ounces or so ounces of silver. So it was just a typo that happened. But let's get into the news. Now, the IMF came out with a report saying that the economic recovery is fake, and governments are in massive debt. And we see this throughout the world. We see it in Japan, we see it in Europe, and we see it in the U.S. Anywhere there is a Western central bank, we see that all these governments are in so much debt that they can't really get out of it. It's impossible. I mean, let's look at the facts. Let's just look at Detroit. Let's look at Cyprus. Let's look at Greece. All of these places continually took on more and more debt. And as you do that, it becomes impossible after a certain point in time to take on more because you just can't make the payments. This is what's happening to the government and the United States right now. We are seeing that they are in so much debt, and without these interest rates being so low, they would be in really deep shit, and they would not be able to function at all. And we are seeing things starting to fall apart, just like we saw in Greece, and we saw it in Cyprus, and we see in Portugal, and we see in Spain, and we see in France, and we're seeing it in the U.S. right now. When was the last time you heard of a city declaring bankruptcy, especially a city as big as Detroit? Really never. And here they are today, and this is a sign of the times that things are not going well for the central bankers, for the government, for the entire economy. It is starting to fall apart. And we see more and more of this, and for instance, J.P. Morgan, is their gold plummets by 66% in one day, just to over 1 ton. And what this goes on to say is that J.P. Morgan reported that just under 12,000 ounces of eligible gold, the same registered gold that 2 days earlier saw its warrants detached and convert to eligible, were withdrawn from its warehouse 100 feet below. But it was today's move that was the kicker, as a whopping 90,000 ounces of eligible gold were withdrawn, accounting for a massive 66% of the firm's entire inventory of non-registered gold, and leaving a token of 46,000 ounces, or a little over 1 ton of JPM in possession. So we are seeing that people and investment firms and those who are holding gold paper are preparing themselves for what is coming. And what is coming is the collapse. And they all know this. I mean, everyone knows this. And, they are doing it. You should be doing it. Now, there are 93 million unemployed workers in G20 nations. And what is happening is, all across the world, we've been talking about this for a long time, that these countries, America is very difficult to see it because they've changed the calculation for everything, and they changed the calculation for unemployment, GDP, inflation. They massage the numbers, so this way you can't tell what's really going on. But the Director General of the International Labor Organization is fully convinced that unemployment is going to continue to rise in G20 nations. And let's just go through some of the unemployment. And again, when have you heard of unemployment this high? The unemployment rate is above 25% in South Africa. The unemployment rate in France recently hit 15-year high. The unemployment rate in Italy is up to 12.2%, which is the highest in the last 35 years. The unemployment rate in the Eurozone as a whole is up to an all-time high of 12.2%. Poland is up to 13.2%, Portugal up to 17.7%, Greece is up to 26.9%, and it's projected that they're going to hit 30%. And in Spain, the unemployment rate is 27.2%, which is worse than Greece. So just from looking at the actions, not what the government officials are saying, not what the Fed is saying, not what the Euro directors are saying, if we look at the actions and really what's going on, past all of them saying that everything's fine, don't worry about it, just go about your business, we can see unemployment is skyrocketing all across Europe and in America. The only difference is, here in America, all eyes on the stock market, reaching all-time new highs. Don't look at unemployment, and one way of making it so you don't look at unemployment, we change the calculation. And you cannot see breadlines, you cannot see people out of work, because we will provide for them so nobody sees this, while in the meantime we steal the rest of the people's wealth. And this is what's happening, because if we really look at what the real unemployment rate is in America, and if we go back to the calculations prior to 2008, we're looking at 23%. But if you're counting all the people who dropped out of the market, underemployed, the unemployment is around 14%. So we are right up there with all the European nations. The only difference is we're hiding it all here. Okay, let's move on. Now, Egypt to reevaluate relations with Syria. The interim foreign minister of Syria now is not pro the rebels. And what he goes on to say is he's going to reevaluate relations with Syria. And he also goes on to say that he also stressed that Egypt has no intention of waging a holy war against Syria, and the political solution is the only way to get out of the Syrian crisis. The Syrian government says the West and its regional allies, especially Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, are supporting the militants, most of whom come from other countries. In addition, several international human rights organizations say the militants operating in Syria have committed war crimes. And we know this because the Syrian rebels are paid mercenaries. The United States government paid mercenaries. Most of them are not Syrian, and they are there for one purpose and one purpose only, is to overthrow Assad and implement a central bank and the use of the US dollar as the reserve currency. Now, the new foreign minister of Egypt is reversing what Morsi was doing, which was backing up the Syrian rebels. And this is a concern for the U.S. government. And you're seeing protests now of they want Morsi back, pro-Morsi people. They're looking to get him back into power. And the U.S. government has troops off and waiting to see if they need to go in and control the situation. The only thing that they're worried about is the new puppet government not to touch the U.S. reserve currency and the central bank. If they feel that's a threat, or the new puppet regime is not going to take orders from the U.S. government, they will go in and take over and control what they need to do to keep everything intact. And that's what's going to happen. Now, India welcomes defense cooperation with Iran. India Defense Minister A.K. Antony has welcomed the expansion of defense cooperation with the Islamic Republic of Iran in different sectors. And we can see that all across the globe now, countries are starting to align themselves with different countries for the eventual war that will be happening. And we're seeing this with Russia and China backing Syria and Iran. We see China and Japan disputing over the natural resources of this island because everyone's grabbing natural resources and making claims to things before the war. And we see India posting troops up in the mountain region which borders China now, India making a deal with Iran, and North Korea making a deal with Iran to purchase their oil. And we're seeing all these nations starting to take sides and starting to strategize for this up-and-coming war, which will eventually happen because the central bankers need it to cover the economic collapse. Okay, let's move on here. Now, Washington is trying to hold peace talks with Iran, and it comes out that there are no new developments regarding any peace. And I hate to say this, the central bankers, U.S. government, do not want peace with Iran, and they're not looking to have peace. They are looking to have Iran and Syria take on the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. And this is what the sanctions are about. This is the reason why they keep, pushing and pushing and pushing them, saying, do you give yet? Because when you give, this is what we want you to do. And Iran and Syria are holding steady and not giving in. And the only thing that they'll do and allow peace is if Iran and Syria finally say, okay, we will use the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. And if you saw that happen, you would see peace and everything would be okay. John Kerry, the U.S. government, would be all over the news that we struck a deal. Peace is great. Oh my God, I can't believe this. But I'm going to tell you right now, Iran and Syria are not going to give in. They will never ever come up with peace because they will never make that deal. So all of this will eventually lead to one thing again, which is war. All right, let's move on here. Now, Iran set to sign gas export deal with Iraq in Baghdad. Now, this is interesting. Iran, which has all these sanctions, is going to make a deal with Iraq to supply them with natural gas to Iraq's plants. And this is being done using the friendship pipeline between Iran and Iraq and Syria. And this has been underway since last year. And you can see why the central bankers want Iran and Syria, because they're going to lose out on all that profit. And they're building this in the hopes that they'll be able to take over Iran and Syria and reap the profits, because the amount of money that's going to flow through these pipes, the amount of gas which is then turned into money, the officials stated that Iran would receive $10 million a day and $3.7 billion a year from natural gas exports to Iraq power plants. And this friendship pipeline is also supposed to supply all the other countries in that area, like Jordan and Lebanon, and you can see why the central bankers need to get Iran and Syria on the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, because if they don't, they will be losing out on all of the money that they think they deserve. Now, I just want to go to Obamacare for a second, because Bonner, the House Speaker John Bonner, renewed his vow to abolish President Barack Obama's health care law, which is Obamacare, or the affordable health care crap that he's spewing out here. And John Bonner goes out to say, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that it never happens, that this Obamacare is shot down. And I have to go back to what I said earlier in my episode, and, Bonner also and other people who've been finally reading Obamacare, even after they passed it, now they're all coming out saying they don't want it. Let's put it this way. And I'll make it really, really simple. If something is good for the people, you don't have to push it. You don't have to advertise. You don't have to include penalties, because really what they're doing is, if I came up to you and said, listen, you need to take this piece of paper, and if you don't, you owe me money. This is what they're doing here with Obamacare. If you don't like what we're doing, just pay us money. Saying the same thing to businesses. If you don't like what we're doing, just pay us money. Because really that's what the tax is. So how possibly can this be good for the people? And for no one to see this until after they passed it is ridiculous, because that just tells me that the government is not working for the people. The only time they realized it wasn't good is after they passed it and they started reading it, because of all their employees and stuff in the government who wanted to be, exempt from Obamacare, which is ridiculous anyhow, because you voted for it and now you don't like it, so you want to be exempted from Obamacare. Finally realized, wow, this is really bad, and now they're trying to get rid of it. Okay, there was an article that came out today that the FAA warns Colorado town that shooting down drones could lead to prosecution. People in that area, I'm assuming, and not assuming, I know that nobody wants drones flying over their heads, spying on them, taking pictures, especially when you can arm these drones to take out people that are combatants or domestic terrorists, or if you decided to fight back. Because you have to remember what Eric Holder said to Rand Paul is a enemy combatant who's firing upon the U.S. government, or a drone can be fired upon. So we have to look at this, and right now they're saying, it's against the law, it can hurt people, it could land on someone. But again, this is against the rights of the people. If the people do not want this, there is no reason for the surveillance. Because what are they really getting out of it? What are they really surveilling? How does it help? It doesn't. Okay, and there was a new article that says state utilities girding their cyber defenses, not guarding, girding, securing. So this article goes on to say that for public utilities and the states that regulate them, cyber threats risk denial of electricity, water, natural gas, and telecommunications. Our state emergency managers include cyber threats in their portfolio of hurricanes, ice storms, and other natural disasters, and physical sabotage. Cyber threats present a new dimension to emergency management with potential devastating consequences and without the certainty of adequate defenses. And it goes on to say that the possibility of a hacker or nation-state disabling a water system, gas pipeline, or electric grid, or leaving us unable to communicate or access financial or health data are real. The public deserves to know what the threats are and how the government is responding. And this whole thing is saying that the states are taking precautions and what's going to happen, and they're just building this up because we've been hearing this for a year and a half, how bad cyber attacks are, how they can hit the public infrastructure, how they can bring down the power. And in my previous episodes, if you haven't heard me say this, that eventually cyber attacks will be used as the main event. And we might see cyber attacks before the main event, of course, because I also said during this fall I do believe that we are going to have the first part of the crash, and you will see bail-ins. You might even see a cyber attack during this period. You might even see martial law. Now, this is all of this if they haven't done this already before this has happened, but you might see all of this happening during this period, and it will be all in the name of safety, for keeping people safe. If cyber attacks do hit during this time, just on the banks, because they're going to want to have, they need to cover this up somehow. They just can't say the Fed made a mistake and the U.S. government made a mistake, and whoops, everyone just lost their wealth, and we'll try to do better next time. They will need to do something to say, oh, we've been cyber attacked in the banks, and look what happened. The market came crumbling down. The Treasury bond market disintegrated, and this is all because of a cyber attack from China. And people at this point might say, "Oh my God, this is," or they might say it's against Iran at this point, or Syria, depending on what country they pick, and they will siphon off money to go along with this entire part one of the collapse. But don't worry, we're going to invade Syria or Iran, and they might use this tactic. Now, another false flag they might use as an event to move into war before the crash might be some type of chemical, biological, or dirty bomb in America to bring to the people, look what Syria just did, and now we need to go into Syria because they just attacked the United States. All of this is leading up to one thing. It's to cover up the collapse and not blame it on the central bankers and the government. And we can see all of this happening by fall. We can see some of it happening even before then. Because again, their backs are against the wall. They can't move or do anything with Syria right now, and they're trying everything and everything, but people aren't responding. Again, when the crash comes, when the part one crash, which I do believe will come in the fall, we might see, bail-ins of the banks, because they're insolvent, and this crash has really left them really with nothing. And the new law states that there are no more bailouts, so we're going to have to do bailouts. We're going to have to freeze everyone's account because of what just happened. So you can't take your money out right now. And some of the banks, we've been noticing that they've been hit by cyber attacks, and we lost some of your money in your accounts. And we just need to close the banks right now because of what is happening. We will let you know on Monday, because today's Friday, how we will go forward from what's happening right now. And this could be a scenario of what is to come. And you can see how this could play out very easily. The blame could be shifted very easily off of the government to some other place, off the central bankers to some other country. It's a very simple thing. Now, today they're having rallies in 100 cities. Al Sharpton is heading this up. Now, again, they can plant someone in these rallies and something. They could start, the race riot thing up again. Will it happen? Who knows? But I just noticed this today, and that they are doing this today in 100 cities. So we'll have to see what happens and if anything comes out of this. Listen, everyone, I want to thank you for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.